Shalom Aleichem and welcome to Machin Leira on my Smicha. One of the mitzvahs HaTorah that a lot of people don't learn, and it's better if we wouldn't have to know about it, is the mitzvah Sasem and HaTorah of Kvuras HaMeis, to bury the dead, to bury them. And the Torah says this in a couple of different places. The Torah says in Devarim Perek Chav Aleph, Pasuk Chav Gimel, and over there it originally talks about one who got punished, so you shouldn't keep him hanging on the tree. It's he should be buried that day. Still, even though somebody like that who deserved punishment, we're very worried about his extra embarrassment. We say you have to make sure that he gets buried properly, of course, for a regular person. When the Torah discusses, Rahman al-Islam, the teichachot, the nishgevunshene zachen that will, Rahman al-Islam, happen to people who don't keep Torah mitzvahs, one of the things it says that the corpse will not be buried, it'll be laying around. So that is one of the curses, Rahman al-Islam, that happens if you don't keep Torah. This inyan of burying, we find that it doesn't only apply for Jewish Mesim. The story is told that Yeshua hung Melech Ai, and that evening he buried him. Under a rubble of stones. And the reason for that is because even for a non-Jewish body, there is also an inyan to minimize their embarrassment. The inyan of being buried in the ground is already mentioned all the way in the beginning by Adam and Chava. It says, with the sweat of your face, you will work hard to produce bread. And it's actually brought in Perikid Rabbi Lezer that Adam Arishan learned from a raven what to do when Cain killed Hevel, and they had Hevel Rahman al-Islam dead. They didn't know what to do. So Adam and Chava were sitting and mourning. They didn't know what to do with Hevel because it was new. This whole thing, this whole death issue was new to them, and they saw how a raven passed away, and a fellow raven took him and buried him in the ground right in front of them. So they said, I will do this. We will do the same like the raven, and we will bury Hevel. And we actually find that the inyan of Kvura actually is mentioned in the Torah by the Ma'aras Machpelah. The inyan of Kvura is mentioned by Moshe Rabbeinu, V'layoda Ishas Kvurasoi Ada Yom Hazeh. So the Kvura is a mitzvah sasem in the Torah, and it's mentioned in different places in the Torah. Where should the Kvura be? Where should a person be buried? Now you're going to learn a lot about the better places like Eretz Yisrael, holier places. Let's talk about, besides those additional kedushas. The Gemara says in Maseches Bava Kama Daf Pei Aleph, and it's also brought in Erev in Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, that Yeshua made 10 takonos as they were entering Eretz Yisrael. One of the takonos Yeshua made as they were entering Eretz Yisrael, which really should apply not only to the Jews in Eretz Yisrael, even to the Jews out of Eretz Yisrael, is that Meis Mitzvah Koina Mekayimai. Meis Mitzvah Koina Mekayimai means that if we find a dead body and we don't know who's his family, we don't know who anybody there to deal with him, wherever we find him, you bury him there, and whoever owns that land cannot protest. That land is the Torah says, I should say, Yeshua is Misakin, that whoever's land that you find the body, that right then and right there you bury it, even though it belongs to a private person. However, the only reason you're able to bring him elsewhere is if there's any chashas that it might, Rahman al-Islam, eventually have issues of tumah, of a kohen is going to walk over and they won't know, it won't be noticeable, then maybe you could get taken somewhere else. But a meis mitzvah as kohen is mekayma, you don't have to bring him to a cemetery. And the place can write that in Chutz La'aretz, because the Goyim, if you just leave it, if you just bury the dead where it is, they might open up the cave and do embarrassing things. So therefore, the minig became that even Masei Mitzvah, they take them to a cemetery. And it's even brought more that even in Eretz Yisrael today's days, even though it's a Yiddish place, everybody gets buried in a cemetery to be Megan, to protect the Taras Eretz Yisrael, that it should stay pure and shouldn't be kavarim all over, and it shouldn't be issues of Tumas Kohanim. So they try to bring all the Mesim into a Beis HaKvaros. There's a very famous Gemara that's actually brought in Maseches Smachas Perek Daled. Amar Rabbi Kiva said that when I started my shimush in front of the Chachamim, I once went early to a shul and I found a dead body on the way. And I schlepped it or carried it 3 Tchumei Shabbos till I brought it to a cemetery and I buried the Mes Mitzvah. So I came and said this to the Chachamim in the yeshiva, and I thought I'm going to get a gold star. Wow, I schlepped the Mes Mitzvah. And they said, Rabbi Akiva, you should know that I'll call psia shoyisa every foot that you carried the mess, you should know ki'ilu ayisa shevach damim. It's as if you spilled innocent blood, because you shouldn't schlep the mess to another place. So the Mes Mitzvah, you bury him right then and there, and it's kainas mekayim. Rabbi Akiva taught himself a tremendous lesson from there, that madoch, you could get punished for something good you did. Of course, you have to be careful not to do anything negative. Now that's by a Mes Mitzvah. But as I mentioned before, the place can already say today that people should try as much as possible to be buried in, there are different cemeteries, dedicated cemeteries where people are brought to get buried. In a cemetery, where should you prefer, where should a person be buried? So it actually is brought in the Shao Teshuvah Sarajba, Siman Shin Samach Tes. You learn it from Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu says, "V'shachafti im avoisai." He wanted to be buried next to his parents. So it's brought that it's preferable to be buried near your parents, your relatives, your father first. And as a lot of these things we learn from different minhagim. It depends on which minig, which Chaver Kedisha, what the minig of that city is. But now that we came to a fact that you bury in a Beis HaChaim, in a Beis HaKvaros, a Beis HaChaim, what makes a piece of land a Beis HaChaim? So there's actually a whole process of how you dedicate a field, that it should be dedicated for a Beis HaChaim. And what's the reason for even a dedication? You could really bury anywhere. So the Steichemed in Avelis Ois Pei Gimel writes that this is all based, why you dedicate a field for a Beis HaChaim, is based on the Gemara Sanhedrin Daf Mamdalad Amid Beis. La'olam yakdim adam tefillah l'tzara. You're like we know, you makdim a refuah l'maka. So you always makdim a tefillah before a tzara should happen. And since, God forbid, the tzara of death does happen, so you always makdim a tefillah first, and you say prayers around the dedicated place, that there shouldn't be too many, it shouldn't happen in a crazy way. And there's a whole procedure how it's done. In Shalos Teshuvas Divrei Makil Chelok Vav Siman Chav Beis, he says that the dedication, the process of dedicating a land for a Beis HaChaim is laharchik mimenu hachitzonim, to push away whatever klippas chitzonim could come there. That's why you make it dedicated as a holy place. It's brought in the name of the Baal Shem Tov that the reason you make a dedication, dedicate a whole process of how it's done, and you dedicate a certain field for the Beis HaChaim, is because you have to make that place holy, b'kedushas Eretz Yisrael. Why do you have to make it b'kedushas Eretz Yisrael? Because Chazal tell us that the Meisei Eretz Yisrael, B'tchias HaMeisim come up first, and Meisei Chutz La'aretz have to go through Mechilas, has to go through tunnels. So somehow, if you make the place a Mokim Kaddish b'kedushas Eretz Yisrael, you will minimize the Gilgul of the Mechilas, of the tunnels. So by saying this Mizmarim and dedicating this place as a holy place, you're making it a Mokim Kedusha like a shul, which has a gather of Bate Knasiyas and Bate Medrashis, similar to the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. It's brought from the Belzer Rebbe, Rabbi Yisachar Doiv of Belz, that when you mekadesh a place for Beis HaChaim, it's not Rahman al-San, you're waiting, this is going to be for the dead. Now, rather, look at it this way. Every Mokim Yishuv in Eretz Yisrael, we need to have dedicated places for Kedusha. And when Mashiach comes b'mheira, this dedicated place will not be for the dead, it will be a place for a shul, for a yeshiva. But it has to be, you have to have a dedicated place for a Mokim Kedusha. And if it happens, in other words, you're not doing it because you're planning negative. You're hoping Mashiach will come right away and this will be a Mokim Kedusha. And we're only putting people there temporarily ad bias goyal tchias amesim b'mheira v'yameinu. Now, again, this dedication has many different minhagim. I'm just going to bring you some of the minhagim that's brought. When you dedicate a Beis HaChaim, the Chaver Gadisha that day fast, and there should be at least 10 people fasting. In this, it's brought in this generation where it's not so easy to fast. People fast part of the day until after they do the hakafis. Hakafis is one of the procedures they do to dedicate. They say different kapitel chtilim as they walk around the field. Everybody in that city that they're dedicating a Beis HaChaim for should give extra tzedakah. And they should give tzedakah for themselves, for their family, for the children, for the wives. Everybody should be dedicated tzedakah for everybody in the city. The Bnei HaChevra should go to the mikveh before they daven. And the one leading this process should be a Rav Gadol. And that, it's actually brought from the Shteichem, and he says, V'etzleinu hasfardim l're'isi v'le'shamaiti minig zeh. I didn't see anywhere where it's brought that if you're moisif, Beis HaChaim, you have to bring somebody special, but that became the minig. It's actually brought that in the Shabbos before they dedicate a plot for Beis HaChaim, the Rav in the Shul gives a speech, and he speaks about the Geula Kroiva. And when you mekadesh a Beis HaChaim, a new Beis HaChaim, you first go to the old one, the one that Rahman al filled up already, and you say Keil Mali Rachmim, and you ask like you say the prayers for there before you add onto a Beis HaChaim again. And this is more as a dedication for a Mokim Kedusha, not something to think about the negative.